If you have an interest in horses and love learning more about horses, the horse industry, teaching, or even managing your own horse business, then you're in the right place. We would love you to join us on our mission, which is to improve the lives of horses around the world through the education of riders, handlers, and trainers. So get comfortable, listen in, and enjoy.
Our next guest on Horse Chats is Helen Fletcher, and Helen's another Equitana educator, but Helen is also a previous guest on Horse Chats. So if you've listened to Helen's chats before, it would have been number 371 or 507, and if you'd like to just sort of put this on hold and go back and listen to them, then that would be great. But meanwhile, I'll tell you a bit about Helen. She's a Pilates Association Australian professional practitioner. Okay, so she's the founder of Equipoise and Movement Education, and she's also the recipient of the Pilates Journal Instructor of the Year, actually, in 2023. And we've got a photo that I just think is a wonderful photo showing her awards. So, I think if that goes up on the page about now, it would be great. You can have a look. Now, Helen, she's had 31 years of personal Pilates practice and 20 years teaching experience that ranges from post-acute rehabilitation to conditioning for sport, including working with one of Australia's 2012 Olympic bronze medalist, Victoria Brown. So if you think that it's all about just Pilates, just wait until after I tell you about International Horse College. The podcast brought to you by International Horse College, which, of course, horse welfare and safety of utmost importance. And that's why International Horse College has included them in the value statement and within the wide variety of horse courses, only utilising methods that promote safe and humane methods of interaction between horses and humans, and of course only supporting safe methods of educating riders, handlers and trainers about horse welfare. Have a look now at the online courses at internationalhorsecollege.com, registered training organisation 31352. Now, getting back to Helen, are you there, Helen?
Yes, I am. Hello, Glenys.
Good to see you again.
Yes, you too.
Just before, I just want to tell people a couple of things about a rider from childhood. You've been a rider from childhood and you've been passionate about healthy biomechanics, not just for the rider, but for horse and rider. So you work on improving the body of the rider, but it's a mindful movement. Equipoise is a mindful movement practice and movement education, and you're continually, I know we'll talk about that a bit more, inspired by the role that the rider's body plays in the ability to influence and also maintain and improve the well-being of the horse. And that's one of the things that we're passionate about, is the well-being of the horse. Before I ask you, I'm going to ask you, it's been 6 years since our last chat, so it's been a while. I'm going to ask you about your business and how that's grown, but the last time you came on, or the first time you came on, you had a favourite inspirational saying, and it was, posture is a balancing act, not a position.
That's right.
Is that still your favourite saying? Is that still something that you continually tell your students, continually tell yourself, or is there something else you'd like to add on to that?
No, I think it's more than a favourite saying. It's a truth that posture is a balancing act, because there are really no static situations in riding and in life. Of course, when we're sitting perfectly still, or when we're with the horse, for example, if we're at halt, there's not a lot of movement, but we're still in that balancing act. And life itself and movement is a constant kind of catching and falling in a way. So I think to look at posture as that is still very much in the forefront of my mind. And that quote was by Eric Franklin, who is the founder of the Franklin Method. And since I told you that favourite quote of mine, I've actually done a really nice amount of training within the Franklin Method. So I've taken my interest there onto another level. But I still love that quote because I think it's very, very true. And the more we think about that, the more we begin to develop an understanding of how the body works, that balance is balance in movement. And it's never more obvious than when you've got a horse and rider combination, because we can sit someone on a horse in a static posture and we can look at their position of their legs and their seat, and that's all really valuable too. But we need to then start moving. And how do we find and maintain and continue to maintain balance, our centre of gravity over their centre of gravity throughout movement? And that there lies the absolute magic of the human body and of biomechanics and of the facial system and how the body actually works together, because we are really designed to move. And it's in movement that we are at our best, I believe, most, physically and emotionally. So I'm ever obsessed with human movement and how the horse and rider interact. And that's something I am just a lifelong student of. I find it completely fascinating.
I was going to say I like the way that you've gone on and embraced the lifelong learning, but, you've just said it yourself, you've embraced that. But it's been 6 years since our last chat, and, someone who embraces lifelong learning is going to have grown, developed and learned more since then. So tell us a little bit about what you've done or how you've evolved or your business has evolved over that time.
Yes, I'd love to talk about that. I feel like I looked back to the date that our first podcast was and I thought, gosh, I've grown and learnt so much since then. I think we last spoke it was either 2018 or 2019. In 2019, I started my Slings Myofascial Training Diploma. Now, the Slings Myofascial Training it's a training fascia consciously. So we've always worked with the myofascial net. Whenever we move, it's an integral part of it's a body-wide connective tissue, really, for want of a better word. So we're never not training the fascia, but to train it consciously is something that I was very interested in, because there's a huge amount of research around fascia at the moment. So in 2019, I started my Slings Myofascial Training Diploma, which is quite a long process, actually. I started that live, and then in, I think, Jan or Feb 2020, we went into lockdown. I was fortunate enough to continue my studies throughout lockdown and are still doing those studies. I'm nearly finished my diploma, so that's been a 5-year challenge as well. So that was one thing. And lockdown really helped my business in a lot of ways as well, because it was through lockdown that I very quickly, through an equestrian client of mine, discovered Zoom and how amazing Zoom is. So I pivoted onto Zoom with my equipoise business and also with my colleague in the Pilates studio business. And from there, I was also able to not only attract clients from interstate and overseas to my business, but do some more further education and training with other people that are internationally based as well. So lockdown, as unfortunate as it was for many, many people, it did open up a whole new way of learning. And for me personally, it was a fortuitous time in the respect of being able to look outward more, do some more study, introduce more people to how I work and to what I do. And I still teach 3 times a week on Zoom.
If people are interested, we'll put those details on in your chat. And as our regular listeners know, we've got horsechats.com. You can just go there and just search for someone's name. You can just go horsechats.com, search for Helen, search for Fletcher, and you'll find Helen. And, those details will be at the bottom of your page, Helen. So
thank you. It might be worth mentioning to the listeners that, and this every January for this will be my 4th year, I've run a 31-day program on Zoom. So from the 1st to the 31st of January, it's a 1-hour class every morning live, and I go from beginner to where we can advance, how I can advance you in that 31 days. I started off with just people attending live, but now you can attend live. It's all recorded, or you can access the recording later. So that just all stacks up on my Vimeo platform over January, and people can come live. There's a beautiful community there, or you can access it, as I said, the recording, until the middle of February. So that's a really fun thing if people are wanting to advance and really improve their riding and are not afraid of a 31-day commitment. that's something that...
It's probably a good time to start, Helen, right at the beginning of the day
Oh, it's
when people are
fabulous,
really
actually.
motivated. Mm.
Yes, it's so much fun that I plan to just do it once, and every year I seem to be doing it again.
All right. Now, do you think that, in the last 6 years or just ongoing, it might have even before then, the equestrian world, have we become more aware of rider fitness?
Absolutely.
I should say more aware of the importance. I think we've sort of always been a little bit aware of rider fitness, but the importance of rider fitness.
Yes, I believe so. I think there's a long way to go, to be honest. But no, absolutely. Most people now are aware that they could or should or want to be doing something towards their bodies. And definitely, there are much more programs. I think when I first spoke to you, there were very few people, and prior to when I first started my business, very few people that were talking about the rider's body and the importance of that in relation to the performance of the horse. So it has definitely become a lot more popular, and there are more programs out there, and most coaches are now aware of it. There's still, in my view, a lack of deep education and understanding, but that will come, that will evolve, as things always do. Yeah. With the rise of that, I must say, we've also had a rise of some quick fix purchases that you can make for different position things, and that's probably not so good, but that's what happens when things go into the culture.
So when you're talking about those quick fixes, are they like unmounted training or mounted training?
No, the unmounted training, unmounted training with a qualified professional is not a quick fix. Usually if you're in the hands of a professional practitioner, they will advise you that there are no quick fixes, and this is a commitment that you need to make to you, to your body, and to your ongoing learning and development, and also to that of your horse. What I probably consider as a quick fix are, little things you can pop onto your upper body to pull your shoulders back, which that type of quick fix is not going to be helpful at all in the long run to help with your position or your stability and mobility and suppleness and flexibility and connection and awareness in the saddle. That's what I mean by a quick fix. I think a good, well thought out program from a professional practitioner of unmounted training is absolutely brilliant.
Okay, so it obviously makes the unmounted training makes a lot of difference in the saddle.
Absolutely does. Yep.
With your own clients, particularly the ones that ride, what sort of outcomes have you found that they've achieved?
I think from talking to clients, the one thing that comes through strongly is it starts with a greater awareness of their body. What I do with my classes, I don't just teach people what exercises to do. I also teach people about how the body works and how their body moves and the fundamentals of human movement. And then I want my clients to be better educated on function and form, and to have an understanding of how their body is actually moving, not just tell them what exercises to do. So what I often hear, for example, a lot of the feedback from the end of a summer program, which is my January program, people start to say they feel much more aware of their body, of where their body is. Now, as a rider, having an awareness of where your body is in space, which means it's an increase in your proprioception, which is what proprioception simply means, your awareness of where your body is in space. So certain types of movement increase proprioception. Proprioception is in your tissues, so good human movement will increase your proprioception. So awareness is one. The second thing I hear a lot is that the people feel more balanced on their own 2 feet and more balanced in the saddle. I do a lot of back strengthening work for posture. We do a lot of upper body work. I really teach people how to understand the complexities of the shoulder joints, for example. We do a lot of hip mobility. We do a lot of stability and strength all intertwined. So contact is improved. One of the things that's really important for a rider is to have adequate thoracic rotational capacity. So the thoracic spine basically runs from the base of the neck to the base of the rib cage as a rough guide. And we need to be able to move evenly in both directions in our thoracic spine, and also flexion and extension, which is forward and back. So my classes are very heavy on what I believe is most required and most helpful to improve a rider functionally. And the offset of that is they feel better, the horse moves better. That we're working on symmetry all the time. None of us are ever going to be perfectly symmetrical, but the goal, particularly with horse riders, is to be looking towards symmetry as much as you can, because it is an important part of an equestrian athlete's abilities. Whereas you look at a tennis player, for example, they're not so concerned, I don't believe, with looking for as much symmetry as possible, because it is a fundamentally asymmetrical sport, because they're not swapping their racket from hand to hand. But in riding, we want to be as balanced as we can be, because research is telling us that if we're not, it can present itself in lameness in the horse. There's interesting research there to confirm that. So
that does sound interesting, Helen. I'd like to know a little bit more about that. So in advance, can we get you back on to talk a little bit more about that research?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, not today, but I'm sure you haven't got time today, but we would find very interesting.
Of course, yeah. I can't quite remember who did this study, so I won't say any names, but I can get back to you on this. One quick study they did, they changed stirrup length. This is to measure asymmetry in the rider. So one of the ways they did that, they took a control group and they shortened one stirrup by 5 holes. So this is not about stirrup length, it's about how the changes then went through the rider's body because of this asymmetrical stirrup length. And I'm not sure how long this study went for. I'm not sure how many were in the control group, but what they found was that the horse started to also show an asymmetrical pattern on the same side of the shortened stirrup. So what that, I believe, would tell the researchers is that whether we like it or not, our body is affecting the horse's body. And that seems to be presenting itself too in forms of rehabilitation. So, for example, last December, by me doing something extremely silly in the Pilates studio, this is no fault of Pilates, I did a very silly thing. I fractured my left wrist. So I had my 6 weeks in plaster, and I don't know if you've ever had a fracture. I'd never had a fracture. So when you take your arm out, you've got little or no range. Now, what I had to do then, which is part of the thrill for me of my work, is to rehabilitate my wrist. So I consulted a specialist physio, and then off I went with my list of things to do. One of my things, I had to stretch my wrist to get the range back, and then I had to start strengthening exercises in all planes, forward, back, side to side, round and round. So I did that diligently, and now I'm back to full function. If I hadn't done that, and this is something I would really love everyone to really hear, if I hadn't done that and I decided that at my age I'm happy with a slightly dysfunctional wrist, because what does it matter? That little bit of dysfunction in my wrist will travel up the kinetic chain, which means it goes up into the other parts of my body. So it would start at my wrist, end up in my shoulder, because I can no longer weight bear. I can no longer do things on this side that I can do on the other side. So that then I'm going to end up with a dysfunction somewhere along that kinetic chain. Does that make sense?
Yes, definitely.
So that is something I would love everyone to really take on board. And I know riders are pretty hardy people, But if you injure yourselves, please, please, please do your rehabilitation. And that'll be a daily thing that you might have to do once or twice a day for maybe 6 to 12 weeks, maybe more, depending on your level of injury. But if you do that rehabilitation, and from my experience, I do a lot of post-acute rehabilitation with my clients, you will come back to full function. What can be perceived as a simple non-displaced wrist fracture, which should rehabilitate fully as it has, can become a problem for you and then down the track for your horse. Because if you end up with an issue in this shoulder, you're going to have an issue in your contact. You're possibly going to have an issue, in all sorts of lines that go through the body, these beautiful interconnections of tissue and fascia. So yes, if you're listening out there, people, and you do have an injury, please, please rehabilitate. If not for you, for your horse. That's my little soapbox moment, Glenys.
I think that's valid information and something that people need to take on, or I'm sure they will take on, but just to drive it home a bit more. So, when are you on at Equitana? Where are you teaching at Equitana? And also, what are you presenting?
I'm on in the Ariat foyer on Thursday the 14th and Saturday the 16th. Now, Thursday is 2:15 p.m. and Saturday is 9:15 a.m. And I'm in the foyer with just myself, and I think they're capping the numbers at 50 people. So this is the first time we've done this. It's it's a movement class.
Yep.
And I'm running two, and a colleague who I don't know actually, but she's presented before, Mel, is doing the Friday and the Sunday. I'm not completely sure what she's presenting, but I will be bringing no props. So this is just the group of people wanting to join me in the movement class with me and a couple of my clients who I'll use to help with some demonstrations. And I'll be taking everyone through a 45-minute movement class. The class is called the Athletic Equestrian because I've believed for many, many years that we should aim to be the athletic equivalent of our horses. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be the type of athlete that you might see on television. You don't have to have the fitness level of an Olympic athlete. But if you are, let's say you're an Olympic 3-day eventer, you're going to need a higher level of fitness and athleticism than someone who's riding twice a week as a pleasure rider. But I believe that we should still have a focus on being equivalent to what we're expecting of our horses at whatever level we're riding. So my classes won't be just for people who consider themselves to be athletes. The class will have a target audience of everyone, and I will give different options for different exercises. And it should be a really fun, interactive thing to do. It'll be really interesting to see if people enjoy it. I'm hoping that they will.
Are both classes on the athletic rider?
They are. They're both called the Athletic Equestrian.
Well, that'll give people an opportunity if they miss one day to go in and
Absolutely. And if they love it, to perhaps come back and do it again, because you'll always learn more and more from repeating often the same thing.
And just to remind our listeners as well that check your schedule, because even though we're only a couple of weeks out from Equitana, schedules change and you just need to check your schedule.
That's right. Now, these classes, I believe, are available for people that have the 4-day ticket holding. They're 4-day ticket holders. They have to be booked online, and because they're capping the numbers at 50, so they'll need to book ahead. Then I believe Equitana send out a confirmation email if they have a space in the class.
Okay, well, that's good. That's great. Okay, so they'll also, if the time or anything changes, they'd be able to email anyway and just up.
That's right. And the bookings are open now, so they can jump on and book in.
All right. Well, look, Helen, that's wonderful. I just think, wow, great to talk to you. I'll be looking forward to catching up with you at Equitana, and I also will be looking forward to catching up with you the next time we come.
Yes, likewise, Glenys. We'll have to make sure we see each other in person at Equitana.
Definitely. Okay. All right. I'll talk to you soon then. Thank you for coming on, and we'll chat soon.
Thanks so much for having me, Glenys.
If you've enjoyed this chat, then please comment, rate and subscribe. If you'd like any changes or recommendations for guests, then please contact us through horsechats.com. And while you're online, have a look at the government-accredited courses at internationalhorsecollege.com. Registered Training Organisation 31352.
Remember that our comments and instructions are general in nature and do not take into consideration your individual horses or your individual ability and circumstances. If you enjoyed this podcast, then please leave your comment below.